There's a genocide happening right now, and you're participating in it. Not with bullets or bombs, but with your silence. Everyday dreams die, innovations are stillborn, and revolutions are strangled, not by opposition, but by the deafening silence of those who could have made a difference. You sit there in your comfortable chair, nodding along, playing it safe, keeping quiet, while the world burns around you. Your silence isn't neutral. It's an active choice. A decision to be complicit in the death of possibility. Every time you choose not to speak up, not to stand out, not to rock the boat, you're adding another victim to the body count. A deafening silence filled the room. Not a word spoken, not a sound made, and in that moment of perfect stillness, something extraordinary happened. The world shifted. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful moments in life often come wrapped in silence? Those precious seconds when you finally hear the voice inside your head, the one that's been trying to tell you something important all along. Let me tell you about a young woman who worked at a small coffee shop. Every morning she'd serve hundreds of customers, smile politely, and go home feeling empty. She did everything right, showed up on time, followed procedures, met expectations. But deep inside, a voice kept whispering, "Is this all there is?" For 3 years, she ignored that voice. She pushed it down with excuses. "I need the steady paycheck. It's not the right time. What if I fail?" But that voice, it never went away. It just got quieter and quieter until one day she could barely hear it at all. And that's when something remarkable happened. On a particularly busy morning, during the rush hour chaos, she suddenly stopped. Mid-order, mid-sentence, she just stopped. The line of impatient customers stretched to the door. Her manager was watching, and the espresso machine was hissing in the back. But in that moment of stillness, she finally heard it again. That voice she'd been silencing for so long. Right there in front of everyone, she untied her apron, placed it on the counter, and walked out. No dramatic speech, no grand gesture, just silence. And in that silence, she found her truth. You see, we've been conditioned to fear silence. We fill every moment with noise. Social media, notifications, endless meetings, pointless small talk. We're so afraid of what we might hear in those quiet moments that we've created an entire world designed to drown out our inner voice. But here's what nobody tells you. Your silence is your power. Think about the last time you were in a meeting where everyone was throwing around ideas, talking over each other, desperate to be heard. Who was the person everyone actually listened to? The one who sat quietly observing, waiting for the perfect moment to speak? Their silence commanded attention because it came from a place of strength, not fear. How many times have you said yes when every fiber of your being was screaming? No. How often have you laughed at jokes that weren't funny, agreed with opinions you didn't share, or gone along with plans that felt wrong? All because you were afraid of the silence that might follow if you didn't. We've become so uncomfortable with silence that we've forgotten its power. We mistake silence for weakness, when in reality it's the foundation of all strength. The universe itself was born from silence, and in silence it continues to expand, creating galaxies, stars, and worlds beyond our imagination. Your silence, that moment when you choose not to react, not to justify, not to explain, that silence speaks volumes. It tells the world that you're secure enough in who you are, that you don't need constant validation. It shows that you understand something profound. True power doesn't need to announce itself. Let me share another truth with you. The people who have tried to change the world through shouting have rarely succeeded. Those who have mastered the art of strategic silence, they've moved mountains. Think about those moments in your life when silence was the perfect response. When someone tried to provoke you, and instead of engaging, you simply looked them in the eye and said nothing. Remember how that felt? Remember the shift in power? But there's a darker side to silence that we need to address. The silence of compliance, the silence of fear, the silence that comes from believing that your voice doesn't matter. That's not the silence I'm talking about. That silence diminishes you. That silence keeps you small. The silence I'm talking about is active. It's purposeful. It's the silence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you stand for. It's the silence that says, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Right now in this room, there are people who are living lives of quiet desperation. You wake up each morning, go through the motions, and fall asleep at night, wondering if this is all there is. You've silenced your dreams for so long that you can barely remember what they were. But what if I told you that your silence, the very thing you've been using to hide, could become your greatest strength? What if the key to transforming your life isn't in speaking louder, but in learning when to be still? You see, there's a fundamental difference between being silenced and choosing silence. One is an act of oppression. The other is an act of power. One is something done to you. The other is something you do with purpose. Consider this. Every major decision that has shaped your life started in silence. That moment of clarity when you knew you had to leave a toxic relationship. That instant when you realized your job was slowly killing your soul. That split second when you decided enough was enough. These moments didn't come with fanfare or announcement. They came in silence. But here's where most people get stuck. They mistake that moment of clarity for the end of the journey when it's actually just the beginning. They wait for something external to change their lives, not realizing that the power has been within them all along in their silence. Look around this room. Every person here has a story of a time when they should have spoken up but didn't. And every person here also has a story of a time when they spoke too soon, too loudly, and regretted it later. The key isn't in finding your voice. You've always had it. The key is in learning when to use it and when to embrace the power of silence. Your silence will shock them because they're not used to it. In a world where everyone is fighting to be heard, your calculated silence will make them wonder what you know that they don't. It will make them question their own noise. But let me be clear. This isn't about becoming passive or withdrawn. This is about becoming so secure in who you are that you no longer feel the need to fill every silence with noise. It's about understanding that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Think about the most respected person you know. I'm willing to bet they're not the loudest person in the room. They're probably not the one constantly seeking attention or validation. They're the one who speaks with purpose, who listens more than they talk, who understands the power of a well-timed silence. I want you to try something with me. In your next challenging situation, whether it's a difficult conversation, a confrontation, or a moment of decision, I want you to embrace silence. Don't rush to fill the void. Don't scramble for words. Just be still and watch what happens. You'll notice something fascinating. The person across from you will likely become uncomfortable. They might try to fill the silence themselves, revealing more than they intended, or they might mirror your silence, creating a moment of genuine connection. Either way, you'll be in control of the situation without saying a word. But this journey of silence, this path to true power, it isn't easy. Our world has programmed us to believe that constant noise equals success. That being busy equals being important. That speaking up, even when we have nothing valuable to say, is better than staying quiet. Let me tell you about a high-powered executive who learned this lesson the hard way. Every meeting, every call, every interaction, she felt compelled to demonstrate her expertise. She had an opinion on everything, a solution for every problem, an answer for every question. Her team dreaded meetings because they knew she would dominate every discussion. Until one day, during a crucial presentation to the board, something unexpected happened. A board member asked a question she couldn't answer. For the first time in her career, she found herself without words. The silence felt eternal. Her instinct screamed at her to say something, anything, to fill the void. But in that moment, she did something revolutionary. She simply said, "I don't know, but I'll find out." The room shifted. The board members sat up straighter. Her team looked at her with new eyes. In that moment of honest silence, she commanded more respect than all her previous speeches combined. You see, we've created a culture that mistakes volume for value. We believe that the loudest voice must be the most confident, the most knowledgeable, the most worthy of attention. But what if we've got it all backward? Think about water for a moment. When it's shallow, it rushes and roars, making all sorts of noise. But deep water moves in silence. Yet, which one has more power? Which one can support massive ships? Which one can carve through mountains given enough time? Your silence is like that deep water. It carries weight. It has substance. It has the power to move mountains, not through force, but through persistence and presence. But here's where many people misunderstand the power of silence. They think it means never speaking up, never taking action, never making their presence felt. That's not what this is about. This is about understanding that your words, when you choose to use them, should carry the weight of your silence. Consider how many relationships have been damaged by words spoken in haste. How many opportunities have been lost because someone couldn't wait in silence for the right moment? How many regrets could have been avoided if we had just learned to sit with our thoughts before turning them into words? Your silence will shock them because it demonstrates a level of self-control that's rare in today's world. It shows that you're not a slave to your impulses, that you're not desperate for attention or validation. It reveals a strength that no amount of talking could ever convey. Think about the last argument you had, the one that escalated into saying things you didn't mean, the one that left both parties wounded and defensive. Now imagine if, at the first sign of tension, you had chosen silence instead. Not a passive-aggressive silence, not a sulking silence, but a thoughtful, purposeful pause. In that space, something magical happens. Emotions cool, perspective shift. The urgent need to be right gives way to the opportunity to understand. Your silence creates a space for wisdom to enter. But let's be honest, this isn't just about personal interactions. This is about your entire approach to life. How many times have you jumped into something because you couldn't bear the silence of waiting? How many decisions have you made from a place of noise and chaos rather than from a place of quiet clarity? The truth is, every major breakthrough in human history came from someone who was willing to sit in silence with a problem long enough to see its solution. Every great innovation, every paradigm shift, every revolutionary idea, they all started in silence. You have that same power within you, the power to sit with uncertainty, the power to resist the urge to fill every moment with noise, the power to wait for clarity before taking action. But this kind of silence requires courage. It requires the strength to resist the pressure to always be on, to always be performing, to always be proving your worth through words. Let me tell you about a sales team that transformed their results through the power of silence. They were trained in all the usual techniques, overcome objections, never let the conversation die, always be closing. Their sales floor was constant noise. Phones ringing, people talking, energy high. Then their new manager implemented something radical. After presenting their pitch, they were taught to simply stop, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. They had to let their prospect sit with the information in silence. No pressure, no pushing, no nervous chatter. The results, their sales doubled. Why? Because in that silence, their prospects had space to make their own decisions. The silence communicated confidence in their product, trust in their prospect's judgment, and a level of professionalism that set them apart from their competitors. This same principle applies to every area of your life. When you learn to embrace silence, you give others the space to reach their own conclusions. You allow situations to unfold naturally rather than forcing them. You create an environment where genuine connections can form. But there's something even more powerful about strategic silence. It gives you time to observe, to really see what's happening around you. When you're not busy thinking about what to say next, you notice things. Body language, tone of voice, the subtle shifts in energy that tell you more than words ever could. In this noise-filled world, your silence will be a revolutionary act. It will make people wonder what you're thinking. It will make them curious about what you know. It will give your words, when you choose to use them, unprecedented weight. Think about the people in your life who talk constantly. Do you remember everything they say? Probably not. Now think about the person who speaks rarely but thoughtfully. Don't their words carry more impact? Don't you tend to lean in and really listen when they decide to speak? That's the power you can cultivate. That's the presence you can develop. That's the impact you can have, not through more noise, but through strategic silence. But this isn't just about external silence. It's about creating internal silence as well. The kind of silence that allows you to hear your own wisdom, your own truth, your own path forward. In a world that's constantly telling you who to be, what to think, how to feel, your silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can reconnect with your authentic self, a space where you can distinguish between the voice of society and the voice of your silence will shock them because it demonstrates a level of self-possession that's becoming increasingly rare. In a world of reactive behavior and instant responses, your thoughtful pause will stand out like a lighthouse in a storm. But here's what fascinates me most about silence. It's the birthplace of transformation. When you strip away all the noise, all the distractions, all the opinions and advice and chatter, that's when real change becomes possible. Let me share something profound with you. Every single person in this room has experienced moments when they knew deep in their soul that something needed to change. Maybe it was a relationship that no longer served you. Maybe it was a career that drained your spirit. Maybe it was a pattern of behavior that kept you stuck in cycles of mediocrity. But instead of sitting with that knowledge in silence, instead of allowing that truth to fully emerge, what did you do? You probably talked about it, you discussed it with friends, you sought opinions. You made plans and lists and vision boards. And all that noise, the pure, clear signal of your inner wisdom got lost. This is why most people never truly transform their lives. They're too busy talking about change to actually change. They're too occupied with discussing their dreams to pursue them. They're too wrapped up in explaining their limitations to break through them. Your silence will shock them because it signals something they're not used to seeing. Someone who's actually doing the work instead of just talking about it. Think about the most transformative moments in your life, the real ones, not the ones you tell stories about at parties. Those moments probably didn't come with fireworks and announcements. They came in silence. They came in those quiet moments when you finally stopped running from yourself. There's a reason why every spiritual tradition, every personal development path, every transformative practice includes some form of silence, whether it's meditation, prayer, reflection, or simply being still. The wisdom of silence transcends cultures and centuries. But here's what they don't tell you about transformative silence. It's not always peaceful. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's so downright terrifying. Because in that silence, you can't hide from yourself anymore. All the excuses, all the justifications, all the carefully constructed stories about why you can't, shouldn't, or aren't ready, they all fall away in true silence. Let me tell you about a group of struggling entrepreneurs who discovered this truth. They were all working incredibly hard, putting in long hours, constantly networking and promoting and pushing. They were doing everything the business books told them to do. But success remained elusive. Then they tried something different. Instead of another marketing workshop or networking event, they committed to spending 1 hour each day in complete silence, no phone, no email, no social media, just sitting with their thoughts, their fears, their dreams. The results were astonishing. Within weeks, they started seeing their businesses differently. They recognized patterns they'd been blind to before. They identified time-wasting activities they'd been using to stay busy rather than productive. They discovered new opportunities they'd been too noisy to notice. But more importantly, they found their authentic voice, not the voice they thought they should have as business owners, not the voice their industry expected them to use, but their real voice, the one that had been trying to emerge through all the noise. It's where the paradox of silence. It's where you find your true voice, not by forcing it, not by imitating others, not by following formulas, but by being quiet enough to let it emerge naturally. Your silence will shock them because it comes from a place of authentic power, not learned behavior. Think about how much energy you spend every day managing other people's perceptions of you. The careful responses, the strategic sharing, the calculated reactions. What if you redirected all that energy inward? What if instead of managing perceptions, you focused on deepening your understanding of yourself? This is where many people misunderstand the practice of silence. They think it's passive. They think it's about withdrawing from life. But true silence is highly active. It's engaged, it's alert. It's the silence of a hunter tracking their prey, not the silence of someone hiding from life. In this silence, you develop what I call decisive clarity. The ability to see situations for what they really are, not what you wish they were or fear they might be. This clarity becomes your superpower in a world where most people are reacting from a place of noise and confusion. Consider how many decisions you've made from a place of noise. Decisions influenced by other people's opinions, by social media trends, by the constant chatter of should and shouldn't. Now imagine making decisions from a place of silence. Not isolation, not ignorance, but true conscious silence. This is where your power lies, in the ability to step back from the noise, find your center in silence, and then move forward with purpose. But to be clear about something, this kind of transformative silence isn't about perfection. You don't have to become a monk or move to a mountaintop. You don't have to completely disconnect from the world. You just need to create pockets of purposeful silence in your life. Start small. 5 minutes of real silence. Not silence while scrolling through your phone, not silence while playing your day, just silence. Pure, unfiltered, uncomfortable silence. Watch what happens in those 5 minutes. Notice how your mind rebels against it at first. Notice how it tries to fill the void with thoughts, plans, worries. This is normal. This is your mind doing what it's been trained to do, create noise. But if you persist, something magical starts to happen. The mental chatter begins to settle. The constant commentary starts to quiet down. And in that space, you'll start to hear something else, something deeper, something truer. Your silence will shock them because it reflects a level of inner peace that most people can't even imagine achieving. That's the most powerful part. As you develop this relationship with silence, you'll start to notice something shifting in how you interact with the world. You'll find yourself responding rather than reacting. You'll discover that you can hold space for others without trying to fix or change them. You'll realize that your presence alone can be a catalyst for change. Think about the last time you were with someone who truly listened to you. not someone who is waiting for their turn to speak, not someone who is formulating advice, but someone who simply held space for you in silence. Remember how powerful that felt? That's the kind of presence you develop when you master the art of silence. This brings us to something crucial, something that most people never realize about silence. It's not just about what you don't say, it's about the energy you cultivate, the presence you develop, the power you build. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the tension, the unspoken conflicts, the hidden agendas? That's because energy speaks louder than words. And when you master silence, you master energy. Consider the difference between someone who's silent because they're afraid to speak and someone who's silent because they're secure enough not to need to. One emanates fear, the other emanates power. One creates tension, the other creates calm. One makes others uncomfortable, the other makes others feel safe. Your silence will shock them because it carries the weight of inner strength, not the burden of fear. Let me tell you about a team leader who transformed their entire department through the power of silence. This department was known for its drama, constant conflicts, power struggles, office politics. Every meeting was a battlefield of competing voices and agendas. This leader did something unprecedented. Instead of trying to solve every problem, instead of mediating every conflict, they started creating spaces of silence. In meetings, they would let tensions hang in the air instead of rushing to resolve them. When team members came with complaints, they would listen without immediately offering solutions. At first, people were uncomfortable. They tried to fill these silences with more noise, more drama, more explanations, but gradually, something shifted. The team started becoming more thoughtful in their communications. They began listening to each other instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. They started solving their own problems instead of running to the leader for every issue. Within 6 months, this department became the most effective in the organization, not because they worked harder or longer, but because they learned the power of purposeful silence. This is what happens when you understand that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. Think about the last time you faced a seemingly impossible problem. How much mental energy did you spend talking about it, complaining about it, explaining why it couldn't be solved? What if instead you had sat with it in silence? Not avoiding it, not trying to solve it, but simply being present with it. This is where true solutions emerge. Not from endless discussion, not from constant analysis, but from the clarity that comes with silence. Your silence will shock them because it demonstrates a level of emotional maturity that's rare in today's world. But here's something even more powerful about silence. It allows you to identify the difference between your own thoughts and the thoughts you've absorbed from others. In silence, you can finally distinguish between your authentic desires and the desires society has programmed into you. How many of your goals are actually yours? How many of your beliefs have you actually examined? How many of your fears are really just echoes of someone else's anxiety? In the silence, these questions become clear. And in that clarity, you find freedom. Now think about all the noise in your life right now. The social media feeds telling you how to live. The news cycles telling you what to fear. The advertisements telling you what to want. The well-meaning friends and family telling you what you should do. Now imagine stripping all that away. Imagine sitting in silence with just yourself. What would you hear? What would you know? What would become clear? Your silence will shock them because it shows you're no longer swayed by the constant barrage of external influences. But let's talk about something that few people understand about silence. Its role in personal power. Real power, the kind that changes lives and moves mountains, doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Think about the most powerful forces in nature. Gravity doesn't make a sound, yet it holds galaxies together. The Earth's magnetic field works in complete silence, yet it protects all life on our planet. The most fundamental forces in the universe operate in perfect silence. You have that same power within you. The power to influence without noise, the power to impact without drama, the power to transform without fanfare. But to access this power, you need to become comfortable with silence. Not just external silence, but internal silence. The kind of silence that comes when you stop arguing with reality, when you stop fighting what is, when you stop resisting your own truth. Your silence will shock them because it reflects unshakable inner certainty that no amount of external validation can provide. Consider how much energy you spend defending your positions, explaining your decisions, justifying your choices. What if you redirected all that energy into simply being sure of yourself? What if instead of trying to convince others, you simply allowed your actions to speak for themselves? This is where true influence comes from, not from persuasion or manipulation, but from the quiet certainty of knowing who you are and what you stand for. Let me share something profound with you. The most powerful form of communication isn't words, it's presence. When you're fully present, when you're completely centered in your own silence, you communicate more than words ever could. Think about someone who's truly confident, not arrogant, not boastful, but genuinely confident. Notice how they don't feel the need to advertise their achievements. Notice how they don't rush to defend themselves against criticism. Notice how they can sit comfortably in silence while others scramble to fill the void. That's the kind of presence you develop when you master silence. Not the silence of submission, but the silence of strength. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of certainty. Your silence will shock them because it comes from a place of complete self-acceptance, not self-doubt. But here's what's really fascinating about this journey into silence. It's not about becoming someone new, it's about uncovering who you've always been beneath all the noise. It's about returning to your natural state of power and presence. Think about a lion in the wild. It doesn't roar constantly to prove its strength. It doesn't pace nervously to show its authority. It simply is. Its power is in its presence, not its performance. You have that same innate power. But like the lion, you need to know when to be still, when to observe, when to simply be present in your own strength.